Hello friends, followers and channel members, welcome to another video here in Microsoft Flight Simulator. A short video for you today, but it's one that so many of you have asked me about, and that is what are my sensitivity settings for my Thrustmaster TCA Sidestick Airbus Edition when flying in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, the settings that I use currently have been set up for use in the Fenix A320, as the Fenix aircraft is perhaps the most common that I fly here on the channel, and also when I'm flying privately at home. And the idea behind the settings that I have is that it tries to mimic as close to reality the real A320 that obviously is flown in the real world. Now, there are some challenges to this because every aircraft, even in real life, has its own little quirks and intricacies, so no two aircraft are exactly the same. They're obviously very close, it wouldn't make sense for them not to be, but there are little tweaks and changes for every aircraft that pilots will pretty much adapt to almost straight away when they get a feel for hand flying the aircraft. You also have to remember that the Thrustmaster Sidestick is a little bit more springy than the one used in the real world. If you have one of these side sticks, you'll know what I mean. You can move it left and right and instantly it will kind of spring back into the center should you just let go, where the real aircraft is not quite as aggressive. So obviously we've got three different axes we can use in order to control the aircraft. We have got the ailerons on the wings and also the roll spoilers that work, moving our aircraft left to right. And this maneuver is the roll axis, probably the most common input a pilot makes when he's hand flying the Airbus. Next then we have the elevators, the little wings at the back near the tail, and these affect the pitch. Obviously we pull up and then that commands an upward pitch, push down on the side stick, that commands a nose down attitude. And finally we have the rudder at the back of the tail fin. This produces the yaw motion of the aircraft. Now, the rudder really isn't ever used in flight. It's only ever used a few feet above the runway to decramp the aircraft when coming into land if you've got any kind of crosswind. So let's go ahead and see how I've got these set up within the simulator for the sensitivities. Again, trying to replicate as close to real life the feedback and feel you get from the side stick, and a reminder that these settings best work with the Fenix aircraft. So here we have the settings for roll, pitch and yaw. So you can see the first part of the aileron axis has been leveled out, softened out a little bit, because otherwise it could be a little twitchy on sensitive parts of your flight. For instance, during the flare, you don't want those wings rocking left and right when you're just wanting a nice flare, because you don't want to destabilize your approach. The idea at that point is to keep your wings nice and level. So the first half of the side stick deflection is a little bit lazy and becomes more progressive with more aggressive responses that you put in. This actually mirrors the normal law logic where the side stick commands a roll rate. The more deflection you put into the side stick, the faster you will roll. Now, I mentioned earlier that these are set up for the Fenix aircraft. Funnily enough, the Neos, the A320 and also the 321s, can actually be quite twitchy on the roll and take a little bit of getting used to. So if you wanted a little more realistic settings for the fly-by-wire A320NX, then you could perhaps make this a little bit more linear in its shape. Taking a look now then at the elevators. So to control the pitch, this has been softened only very slightly, and with this it means that you don't get too much overcorrecting when you're trying to obviously do the flare or do the rotation at the start of your flight. One thing to make a note of though is that the ground effect in the simulator seems to be a little bit overdone. We've known this for quite a while, but this obviously affects when coming in, so you will perhaps need to have a little play with this and get used to it if you're going to use these settings to try and perfect that landing. The rudder then is set halfway between the ailerons and the elevators, and the main reason for this is, of course, you don't want to have a violent yawing from left to right when you're on the runway. Now, a lot of people will of course have rudder pedals. At the moment I'm yet to set these up, so using the twist action on the TCA side stick, this is probably the most realistic that you can get for the time being, and it seems to work rather well. You have just enough authority to be able to control your aircraft without it being too overbearing. You may have noticed as well that there is just a hint of a dead zone in all of these settings, and that's just for the reason that obviously when you've got your hand on the side stick, which controls 3 different axes, you don't want the aircraft to be receiving any inputs if your hand is just resting there. If your hand's resting on the side stick in the real aircraft, of course, it's not going to receive any inputs from you. It's only until you physically command a directional input one way or another on the side stick that it actually starts to have an effect. Of course, here on a home PC, every slight movement of that side stick will send a signal to your PC, and so a command will be initiated. We don't want that, however, so that little hint of a dead zone just helps. So those are the most realistic settings that we can come up with for the Thrustmaster TCA style stick when flying the Fenix add-on A320 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. A huge thanks as well goes to HD for taking the time to go through and set all these up. It's taken a lot of trial and error to try and get these to mimic the real aircraft, and of course, as I said right at the start of the video, even the real aircrafts do differ slightly from type to type. I'd love to hear if you have set your simulator to the same sensitivities as mine shown in the video, and if so, how are you getting on with them? If you've got your sensitivity settings set to something different, then please again leave a comment down below, let us know what you've got. What's very interesting, of course, is that every pilot kind of has his own interpretation of the inputs, so what one A320 pilots will say might differ slightly from another, so a lot of this is subjective. Obviously, you can set these up, go and have a play and see for yourself how you're getting on with these. Thank you so much for watching. If you have found this video useful, then please do leave a like, and of course, if you are brand new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss any future content or live streams. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, bye bye for now.